So welcome everybody. My name is Martin Paver. I'm the chief exec of a company called Projecting Success. And what we're trying to do is to inspire people about the power of data in project delivery. In terms of PMOs, been involved in PMOs for quite a few years. I led one. So I was a contractor working for the MOD a few years ago, and I led a $10 billion PMO on all the satellites and IT projects and that sort of stuff. So I saw the frustrations. So I had a team of 50 odd people, huge amount of frustrations getting hold of the truth. So just getting line of sight on some of this stuff. And there was big teams of people who just munging data every month and putting reports, and some of those reports don't get read and really frustrating, right? So we're trying to fix it. We're trying to get a movement going. So we have got the project data analytics community, and that's associated to these events today. So we're trying to inspire people about the art of the possible and where this goes. So what I've done today, I've set up a little session, and a massive thanks to my three guests today. So I've got Amy Hoy. So Amy reached out to me a couple of years ago, I think, something like that, and expressed some interest in this. So Amy works for a company called Ramsey Healthcare. So she's joined the apprenticeship scheme, and she's doing great stuff, and it's starting to make an impact on her job. We've got David Belshaw. So I met David a couple of years ago, reached out to me a couple of years ago, had some lengthy conversations with him recently, just before Christmas. David really gets this stuff, and I think he's going to be one of the pioneers who really start to smash this out the park. So David works for Rolls Royce, and he's the head of project management for Rolls Royce. And I think you'll sort of get an inspiring session from David as well in terms of his thoughts about where this is going. And last but not least, we've got Mrs. PMO here. We've got Lindsay. So Lindsay Scott runs the House of PMO, the co-founder of it. So if you want to know anything about PMOs, she's the lady, really understands this stuff in detail. She sees some of the frustrations as well about trying to land this in the industry, what's working, what isn't working. So we've got a brilliant blend today of 3 presentations, and then a bit of a panel session, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So without any further ado, I'd like to pass over to Amy, and she's going to run us through her thoughts about her journey in project data analytics through the lens of a PMO professional. So Amy, welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent. Right, today I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and a bit about PMO that I run and our data journey. Some experience that I've had from being on the apprenticeship and some of the practical skills that I've gained. How this has influenced Ramsey and building the digital PMO that I've been working on for the last couple of years. All right, so starting with a little bit about me, some nice bits of healthcare tech there for you. So as I say, I'm the digital PMO at Ramsey Healthcare. We're in the middle of a 5-year digital transformation, sort of across the board within the organisation. So it's a bit of a journey, and obviously we're part of that journey. So I'm part of that. I'm building quite a structured digital PMO with cutting edge data management and analytics that go from the projects all the way through out into the hospitals and heads of. And we take strategic roadmaps, which we're given from centre sort of globally, and then we break it down into portfolios, projects, programs, and deliverables. We then make sure we manage through the system until they're done. And these are just some of the qualifications I've got along the way. So this is my journey as a PMO person. I started with a PMO which was quite unstructured, to be fair. It had lots of spreadsheets and MSP, PowerPoint, Excel, it was brilliant. And we had some very unusual, erratic VBA tools that were great, but really, really inconsistent and nerve-wracking as to whether they were actually going to work or not. Developing them was quite hard, so I had to do a bit of VBA skills to get them working, but it really wasn't ideal. And then we moved from that into sort of up the maturity level into a PPM tool. So I use Keyed-in as our PPM tool. And that helps because it's very structured, and so we've got sort of some more automated reporting, and the back end is quite well structured and managed. So that's really useful as a PMO to get all that information in. And then at the next stage has been to sort of move from the structured data into more automated reporting, so we can prevent some of the collation of information and just deliver data cleanly from the project managers through the reporting tools into the PMO reports. So I can do rapid QA and then get them to update their reports at source and then re-report really cleanly all the way through, just refreshing the data. And it's a much better way of doing it, because all the errors and issues that you get with data handling and data management are removed by having the right conversation at the right place and then flushing the data through, so it works very cleanly. And the next steps for me, which have been enabled by the data analytics training, is to build out the reports in Power BI. So move it from the PPM tool out into a tool that I can surface more more openly within the business, and use it to develop sort of dashboards and sort of apps and all of those sort of things that make the data come alive. So I want my project managers to have deliverables of, you know, training in a certain location at a certain time, and I want that information to be out there with all of the heads of and the hospitals. As soon as we know, they should know. If it's provisional, we know, they know, and it, you know, keeps us all on the same page, and it means we're all having the same conversation about what's being delivered. And that's sort of, and there we go. So my aim is automated dashboards and insights across the business. So we can automate RAGs, do project health checks, compliance with framework, almost anything you want, really. So my personal experiences from the apprenticeship, it was, as I say, it was driven by the requirement to have some better reporting, less collation and cutting and pasting and all of that stuff, and more just good information flowing through. But I had a bit of a gap in my skill set in that I didn't have all the Power BI, Power Apps, data analytics training that you need to actually build these tools. I mean, still need help within the organization to get access to things and all that sort of stuff, but actually having the confidence to know what we can build, how we can build it, and all the tools and tricks that you learn from being on a training course has been invaluable. And I also knew that was going to cost quite a lot. And I thought that might be an issue, because it can be. So I was delighted when I came across Martin, discovered Projecting Success and the data analytics training. And so I discovered it, and I went to my boss and I said, Alan, I don't suppose you'd be able to put me on this training, would you? And much to my surprise, he said yes. And Ramsey have just been amazing. They've been really supportive. They've given me lots of time and energy and opportunities to get this up and running. It's been brilliant. Alan's obviously been great, and I started the course in March, so that's been really good. Projecting Success have been fantastic at supporting as well. I feel like they're always there, available for help, and I've got a good cohort of learners behind me. And we all sort of compare notes and support each other on our journey through. As I say, Ramsey provide the time, and we complete the course. Well, I complete the course hopefully at the end of August this year. So moving on to the next thing. So the apprenticeship has focused on delivering data in a modern sort of data-driven organisation. It's 18 months. It started with 2 days training a month for the first year or so. So all kinds of different bits of tools and tricks that you learn along the way. So you do 2 days a month of training, and then a day, well, this is the way my course was built, and then a day of off-the-job training, which is basically recapping the stuff that you've learned, doing some homework effectively, and then working on, as you move towards the end of the course, working on your projects to support all of the learning that you've done. And as you move on, the emphasis moves from all the training into using the skills to deliver actual, rapid tools for your organisation, which is great, because that's really what we're all here for. It's not just about the learning, it's about the delivery. Anyway, back to practical skills gained. So there's data management and data handling and cleanup tools, cybersecurity, information governance. This is all just stuff you need to know, really. It's really good background information for a PMO, because you will be expecting your project managers to go around all of these hoops as they deliver out projects if they're technical. So I did Power BI, which is great. A bit of Python coding, Power Platform, app development. You don't have to do all of these. You can just do a little bit, whatever takes your fancy, really. And enhanced data visualization, which for me with the dashboard building has been really useful. It's amazing to look at other people's dashboards and see what good looks like and get an idea of it. And then last but not least, you can move on to machine learning, AI for coding, any of those sort of things, but only if it takes your fancy. So the impact of these skills on project management. So as a PMO, basically my main focus is making sure that my projects are following consistent life cycle framework. We know where they are, what stage they're in. We make sure that they've achieved all the different stage gates, and that they've got permission to proceed. And then I use obviously the tools that we have available to monitor the delivery. And so some of the tools that we have offer collaborative working across the team with shared resources. So we have constraints like every business. So we have resource constraints. We have test platform constraints, and we have particular pinch points in availability. And we work together to manage across all of those. And part of our reporting is looking at the constraints and working out if we need to, how we can manage them better across the business. And that's quite a big insight. And we also provide real-time dashboards and reporting for the PMs to use in meetings, so they don't have to do all the, if I can make it so that they put the data in and it pops out nicely, so much the better for all of us. Gives you a consistent look and feel, which helps it feel like the organisation is structured. It just makes you look more professional as an organisation. So the impact of these skills on PMO are we spend less time collating information, which is good. And we've developed some supported automated reporting processes. So we have, regular monthly reporting where you go and people update all of their information, and we can go and review and QA it. This gives us more time for insights to dig into the data and see common issues for delays and overspend, any quality issues coming through. And then we can go and take those into the business and work on making the projects run more smoothly without every project hitting the same buffer. And we also manage the dependencies across the projects from programs and portfolios, and from external organisations. So if we have a big software upgrade, we all need to be on the same page with that. So, or if we have hardware being delivered across the organisation, anything along those lines, we can coordinate all of that sort of thing. So, last but not least, so the Ramsey Digital PMO, this is our framework that we follow. We have in every stage of our framework, we have different reporting that we can make available to our projects, our project managers. They're not obviously all of them for everyone, because that would be way too much. They're different pieces of reporting for different audiences, but they all stem from the same data, which means there's a consistency of information that rolls out, which is great for the business because we're all telling one story. And that's sort of really the key part of this. And so to close, just like to say, so we've covered a little bit about me, a little bit about the PMO and my data journey, and some personal experiences on the apprenticeship, some of the practical skills we've gained, how this has influenced Ramsey's project management and the digital PMO. And that's it really. I'm ready to hand over, David.
So superb. That was really good, Amy. Thank you so much. So that's your vision, right? So where next? So some of this stuff, you're starting to improve what you've already got, but In terms of transforming the PMO as well, where do you think it's going to end up in a couple of years' time? Once you start to look at the Centre of Excellence and GPTs, you're starting to get into those now, you start to have a look around some of the GPT capabilities. So where do you think this is going to go next? So what's your take on it, Amy?
Oh, I don't know. I guess more use of things like sentiment analysis, so we can actually see how project managers are working, how they feel about what they're achieving, all of that sort of thing. The updates that we give, whether the updates need to be written by the PMs, whether we get automated updates written which could contextualize all the information that's within the project information. Honestly, I really don't know exactly where it could end up with. I mean, there's lots of other sort of slightly more crunchy areas where you could look at task planning, making sure that things are, if things are fall on or off track, or the average time to deliver a specific task or a set, or more mathematical things that you could do along the lines. I mean, the world's your oyster. You could do what you like with it, I think.
Superb. Love it, Amy. Well done. Really good. Thank you so much. So next up, we've got David. So David, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm David Belshaw. So I'm one of the heads of project management for Rolls Royce. Effectively, I run one of the biggest PMOs in the company. So we look after a portfolio which is measured in billions of pounds, and we cover projects that start from R&T. We do a lot of kind of NPI, new product introduction, into kind of manufacturing and in-service. So we cover the full breadth of kind of the project life cycle. So I have a PMO of about 20 people, and we look after a function of about 450. So that kind of gives you a bit of a size of the kind of PMO that I look after. So this afternoon, I really want to give you an insight into kind of my perspective as like a head of PMO around project analytics. Okay, so why am I interested? So I am really passionate about building project management capability in my business. I'm also a self-confessed kind of project controls geek. So I find this stuff absolutely fascinating and really interesting. So why am I interested? So I talked a bit about my personal interest, and I really do think project analytics will massively change the capability and lead us to a really big change in performance in project management, and particularly PMO. And then from a business perspective, as a company, we need to spend more time making the boat go faster, spending more time changing the outcomes, so better on-time delivery, better cost performance, enhanced quality, and we're really focused as a company of improving that. We also have quite a high reporting burden, so there's a lot of time kind of feeding the machine. We also have people spend a lot of time doing like data wrangling, so getting data ready, combining different data to create reports, and not enough problem solving, people actually changing the outcomes. We also have a really high demand for PM staff and a really high demand for PM specialists. And in the last couple of years since COVID, we've seen our productivity plateau. Part of that might be because we've introduced a number of new starters, and we're talking hundreds as our business has grown, but we need to be more productive. Right, so I'm all in, I'm all sold into it. So for a moment, I want us to imagine we've got this huge challenge. So imagine we armed more of our people with this project analytics capability. If you click on, there's a couple of animations, not many. And we work against one plan, pooling our efforts, making the best use of all our talent and skills. So we've got some companies that are really good at kind of planning and scheduling, other companies that already have good change systems. And actually, we all shared that work that we do together for the benefit of all. I personally think we will make a huge impact across the whole profession. And that's exactly what effectively I am doing. So we're going to launch a coalition of like-minded companies that are going to go after this together and do exactly what I've kind of put on the slide there. So I'm really, really excited about that, because I do think we'll make a huge change in the way that PMs, PMOs, and kind of project teams operate. And I think that'll lead to a number of benefits. So if you go to the next slide, please. So I mentioned some of these already, and I won't go through them. But in terms of some of the benefits, I think we'll see. So In terms of data quality, we've got a kind of mixed bag in my company. We've got some teams with really great data quality and others that are not so good. But if we can move to more workflows, we can start to validate data at source. So we don't put garbage into our systems and we won't get garbage out. I think that will be a really big benefit for us. We also have quite a high cost of our assurance activity. So I've got some absolutely great SMEs, but I've only got a few of them. And taking them off supporting the business to do assurance is quite a high cost. And some of our assurance can be quite low quality. Have you filled out a template? Have you done this step correctly? Whereas actually using project analytics, we can do a lot of that automatically and actually focus on really working out how effective our systems are, not just how well we filled something out or completed a task. We've had to onboard lots of new people in Rolls Royce, and that again comes at quite a cost. There's a lot of time to upskill people. We put a lot of time into people development, and that's great. However, the industry is kind of booming for PM, so actually we need to do more and more. And if we keep using the same methods, we find we won't be able to do it fast enough. So I think really, with the rise of stuff like AI and chatbots, we'll be able to upskill people with minimal effort. And part of that is I think we'll see the rise of kind of PMO or kind of super user bots. So a lot of my SMEs, again, really capable people, but they can get tied down in answering questions, which can sometimes be quite trivial. Where can I find this? How can I do that? That's not a great use of their time. So again, I imagine we will have a chatbot which will be able to answer a lot of those queries, available all hours, satisfying multiple people on a function all at once. So I find that quite amazing to think about. I think as well, we'll see a lot of cost savings. So we're actually working something now around how we do schedule health, and that's been through one of our apprentices on the project analytics apprenticeship now, around how we can get schedule health to the masses. Obviously the cost of some of the software use is quite high, and I think as we move to kind of community development kind of apps and other things, we can kind of lower those costs and focus our kind of resources on the tools that we really need, some of the niche tools. And I guess as part of all of this, automation frees people up. So I think, again, we'll go to higher value adding work, more work focused on changing the outcomes. And one thing one of my mentors said to me is they measure how good a PMO is with one simple question: how strategic is the PMO? How much does the executive of the company rely on the PMO? And I think with the enablement of project analytics, that will make my PMO even more strategic and other PMOs more strategic, which I think is a really good thing for PMOs. So I've kind of put my strap line at the bottom. So I think the benefits for myself and for Rolls Royce is that, we'll have better project delivery. We'll spend less time doing the kind of transaction, more time changing outcomes. And as a PMO, I think we'll be more efficient, more effective, and better valued in the company, which is a great thing. So yeah, some really key benefits. Next slide, please. And if you can do 2 clicks, thank you. So what I've tried to think about now is how I think kind of the strategy of the PMO and the key aspects of the PMO will change. So I won't go through all of these, and there's quite a lot on this slide, but from a PMO perspective, I generally think that we'll see 2 types of PMO emerge. We'll see those that are really capable around project analytics, and I think we'll see those that aren't. And I think we'll see those diverge quite considerably in the kind of next couple of years. I think a lot of the functions of some of our PMOs that are supportive or controlling around like checking process completion, checking tasks will also be automated. And as I said, I think PMOs with that data analytics capability will have more C-suite kind of influence. And the other thing, even this week, so you'll have seen that PMI released their own kind of AI bot, PMI Infinity. I think our relationship with the professional bodies will change quite considerably. So obviously it's still quite early days, but that interaction of going on to a kind of professional body's website, looking at their reference documentation, looking at their blogs, I think will really change. And obviously PMI are kind of leading the way on how that will change. And I also think some of the certifications that some of those bodies offer will also change. So the need to have someone be able to remember lots of information is going to change quite considerably if they can use a chatbot to tell them quite quickly. So I think, again, that will change, and yeah, it'll be really interesting. And then from a people perspective, I think as well, we'll see the kind of organizational design of PMOs change. So we've got different teams in my organization. So we've got the PMO, so we're a centre of excellence. We've got project controls teams that offer a lot of data and reporting to our programs, and obviously we've got project delivery. I think the boundaries of those teams will change, and actually some of those roles won't exist and some new ones will exist. So I think, again, that'll be quite profound. And I think, again, the way we learn will change quite a bit as well. So I think we can enable people to kind of learn as they do. So imagine filling out a business case and your bot is then telling you how to do something. You don't need to go onto a course. You can start to do tasks and obviously get guided through them based on good practice from your own company, best practice from elsewhere, etc. So I think that will change. And one example where I used AI with my learning was last year I did my certified Scrum Master course. And actually I was trying to prepare and revise for the exam, and I actually asked ChatGPT to test my knowledge, and it was amazing. So it gave me examples from the Scrum guide, it looked at my answers, it critiqued them, it said you could do better here, or you missed a point, or it confirmed it with a really good statement. So again, that's like, you can do that now and it's amazing. If you can click on a few more for me, Martin. So that's kind of PMO and people capability. Talked a little bit about process and workflows, and I've talked a little bit how I think assurance will change, but I also think like our real-time understanding with project progress will change, and I think we'll be able to present ourselves through the use of data analytics with different scenarios based on different optimization goals. So for example, if you want to bring in your project timescales, do this. If you want to do the cheapest possible cost, do these options. Or if you've got some critical resource that you want to protect the time of, do these options. So again, I think that'll again totally change the game in project delivery. And also in tools and systems, I've talked a few of these things already, but I think we will be we'll have a more holistic focus on using our data. So often we have to compromise around our process or potentially our reporting via the tools that we use. I think we'll totally change that and turn that upside down. So we'll be kind of data focused. And I think that will make us even more effective. I think as well, with the rise of like the model driven apps where we can make some more bespoke functions, that will actually allow PMOs to be more agile. So they'll have the freedom to be able to amend processes, workflows, reports, interactions more easily and adapt to their needs, which again, I see is really powerful. So next slide, please. So I'm actually on the cohort for PMO on project analytics starting at the end of February, and I'm really excited about it. So I think it will really transform the way I operate, my team operates, and how my function works. I think it'll be great to meet some more like-minded people, and it's already great to hear about kind of Amy's experience. Again, that really excites me to see again what she's already been able to do on her apprenticeship. And I genuinely feel that will unlock some transformation in how PMOs operate, and we'll be able to unleash a real community of people that want to make a difference. And that really excites me. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I think, again, it's just the beginning, but I think we'll really set the foundations to like profoundly change the role and the impact of the PMO. So yeah, I'm really excited. And that's me.
Brilliant, David. Well done. Excellent. Inspiring stuff. I love it. I love it. So I met David just before Christmas. We spent a few days together going through some of this stuff. And he really gets it, And his team, very, very competent people, his team get it as well. So I think you're going to be the pioneers on this, David. I think you'll really smash this out of the park. David's leading this coalition as well. So we've got United Utilities, EDF, got Sellafield, we've got National Highways, the MOD's part of it as well. So that coalition together, once we start to get going with it, we start to build this pipeline of all these little Lego pieces, like an app or a dashboard, whatever. You're going to make a massive difference, David. So well done. Ace stuff.
Thanks.
So what do you think this looks like? If you're looking 3 years' time from now, what does it get looks like?
Like I said, I think it's going to make such a big change. So I think the more and more we do, the more we can then build. So I think for my focus, it's about releasing capacity in the first couple of years. So we've actually already started, even before I knew about kind of yourself, mine, and project analytics on workflows. So that's already enabled us to actually remove quite a lot of effort of our teams and make things that were quite tedious and time consuming automatic. I think for us, so I work in a secure environment, so we do not have access to a lot of cloud-based IT. So really, I think we will be probably a little bit behind the curve, but we're trying to push as much as we can to get things on site. So we've got people already talking about how we're going to use large language models on our site, and how we can start to pilot a lot of things. And I think as well, kind of people are starting to really get inspired, and that's starting to get more and more use cases kind of coming out from the kind of ground up. So yeah, I think we'll really change, and I think our organisation will change and adapt. But yeah, we are early on the journey, but really excited about the stuff we're already doing.
Brilliant, love it. So thank you, David. And last but not least, we've got Lindsay Scott from the House of PMO. So Lindsay, over to you.
Right, hello,
Welcome.
hello everybody. Thanks for having me. Great to hear Amy and David's journeys, because we don't hear enough about these kind of stories. And I think one of the things that many of us in the PMO space, when we hear about things like data analytics and AI, we imagine this wonderful kind of view where, you know, we're going to have an amazing data visualizations that are going to be able to really help our organizations in project delivery. The reality, though, and I hope you like the Excel monster, because I think, as Amy alluded to, I think a lot of PMOs today are still struggling with that whole kind of unstructured data, which is really holding them back. What I wanted to share with you today, from a House of PMO point of view, you see on the agenda, was just a little bit about where the journey has been, and I'll just tell you about the last few years, and also where the wider PMO community is, because, you know, that is the thing, that there's always going to be people that are ahead of the curve, but for this, you know, this kind of subject matter, you know, is how do we make sure that the vast majority of PMOs are heading in the right direction? So I just want to talk about actually back in 2019 is where we started, and interestingly, we thought RPA. This is basically, you know, starting to listen to things around the AI. And we thought it was going to be RPA that actually would be the thing that most PMOs would jump onto in terms of moving forward using AI technologies. But interestingly, it hasn't turned out that way. But that's how we started in terms of a journey to understand what was happening in this space. Because obviously, PMOs have a lot of repetitive tasks and things that would be cool to be able to automate. But that's why we started. We even got our own bot going in that kind of RPA bit. But again, it's kind of fizzled a little. And then 2020, we thought, right, we're going to have to talk about this, and let's get some people around the table that are already starting to think about it, and their organizations are already starting to think about it. We've got people around the table. This is a report that was produced at that time, so 3 years ago, looking at some of the questions that people have. And I think these questions still stand today, 3 years, 4 years later, you know, about what is happening, because I think what we found back then, it was still this all sounds interesting for people that were that natural curiosity, or as David has alluded to, you know, I'm quite passionate about this kind of stuff anyway, and it was those kind of people that were getting interested. But it was also at this stage is actually trying to understand the problem that we have with data, because that is the huge part of obviously data analytics. If you talk to many PMOs across the globe, it is this bit that really does let them down. So there's a lot of questions that needed to be kind of answered. And yes, they feel very basic. But again, thinking back at 2020, you know, if we were wanting to do all these wonderful kind of data viz and get these really great insights that we don't know today, you know, these are some of the fundamental questions. And interestingly, today, some of these fundamental questions are still, you know, not being answered, still nowhere on the radar in terms of the organisations. It is getting to grips with the data, because again, we understood from again the people that were starting to look at this space is that, you know, there is no real data culture within the organisation, and therefore not within the delivery part of the organisation either. People were doing bits and pieces with and trying their best with things like Excel. Power BI is a thing back then in 2020 when people are starting to play with some of this kind of stuff. But the overriding thing is what is the organisation's approach and thinking around data culture? And again, back there, you were still getting things of, oh, yeah, it's all very futuristic and it feels like it's far away. But look at us now, only 3 years later. But the problem still exists that even just this week, talking to one organisation where their PMO wanting to know more about this subject around AI and data, because their organisation's threatening to batten down the hatches and we don't want anything to do with it, which is interesting. But I think it's one of those things that that organisation is not alone. There is quite a lot of pushback against it. And from a PMO point of view, we can realistically only do what our organisation wants it to do. So there is some stuff there about, well, does our PMO understand what our organisation's approach is to this kind of stuff? Do we have a data culture, and what is it? What's the data strategy? All of those kind of things. And at that point, we also started to learn about, well, does that mean that the PMO becomes project data analysts, or are we looking at bringing in people into the PMO space in order to bring those skill sets in? Or is the PMO as it exists today in 2020, or as today, are we the data translators? So are we there to be able to look at those insights and, you know, be able to really understand what it's trying to tell us? So there's still that bit there where, is it about PMO practitioners upskilling, or do we bring PMO skills, bring data skills into the PMO in order to be able to provide that kind of service to our organisations? 2021, and Martin might recognise this, starting getting more on the conference agenda, because this is, you know, by this point, people are, again, it's still the ones that are a bit more ahead of the curve. It is the ones that are more curious about this kind of stuff, or it's because their organisation is in the business of making sure they make the most out of their data, which is not the case for every single organisation. But these were some of the kind of barriers, challenges to this kind of thing. But also, again, just thinking about, and again, 2021, a lot of the messaging was about the PMO has to get curious. You need to be thinking about how we can try and play with some of this stuff, even if our organisations are not quite sure at this point, or indeed there's no data strategy or anything coming from above. But again, even at 2021, you were already getting organisations that were really starting to get involved in this kind of stuff. And one of the reasons why is that they, you know, that their business does rely a lot on data aspects. And what we'd found within the PMO, and going along to some of things like Martin's Project Hack events, is that it tended to be the kind of bigger construction engineering type firms. And it's those kind of people that were doing project controls already that had a better handle on data, versus the ones that would be, you know, working within business and IT type PMOs. So there's that kind of separation come in, where project control type organizations were getting a lot more interested in this than the others. What you're looking on screen there, so this is just 2022, and this is literally a couple of weeks before the latest version of ChatGPT, where everybody can now play with, came into existence, because these guys were there at a Project Hack thinking exactly what you were talking about, David, when you were saying about you know, there's so many things that the PMO gets into conversation with. Where can I find that template? How can I find more about that process? How do I do this? These guys were working on having a smart assistant. So if you imagine the paperclip that used to be there in Microsoft products that used to annoy the hell out of you, these guys were thinking about, well, could we have a PMO equivalent? And they had to try and do it by scrapping about, trying to connect to the kind of ChatGPT forefront to what it is now. Getting and looking at coding and all that kind of stuff. But these guys were interested in it, and it felt like it was very much a very technical and very codey and very, you know, programming. And actually, that's not for everybody. And what we've started to realise coming into 2023 is that there's very clear differentiators between what the PMO could be offering, which is the ones that are developing. But equally, there's the people within the PMO that are the users of the tools itself. It's not necessarily the PMO that will be creating all of them, because if they're not that technically capable or that technically minded, how are we going to be able to use some of this stuff if our PMO is very much about program and project management related experts rather than bringing that techie programming coding type skills? But luckily, 2023 and now, a lot of the tools feel very user friendly than we did just even like 18 months, 2 years ago. 2023 for us was about, okay, let's just come a step back from the technical bit, which is what the tools can do and what analytics we could get out of it and things. From a PMO point of view, what is it about? We're working within businesses. So what is our businesses' attitudes to this? What are they wanting to do? What's their strategy around this? And here are some of the fundamental kind of questions or statements or things that we need to be thinking about in PMO. And this again was, it came from one of the project hack events at Manchester City's ground, yoo-hoo, where we actually got some of the people in the room that were there not to take part in the hack, but they were more of the kind of PMO project manager leaders that were trying to understand how some of this stuff is going to impact. And we got them into a room and we said, look, you know, forget about what's going on out there, which is all feels like very, you know, it's weird and wonderful stuff, really hard to get your head around. Let's just have a conversation from the business point of view about what are some of the things that we need to know about, things that are going to have to be in place. And you can see some of the kind of initial steps, the kind of things that you will need to understand or questions that need to be asked, or, you know, what direction, where do we start with this kind of thing? Because I think that was one of the trickiest things, is where do you start? You know, where is the best place to start? It's great to listen to Amy's, and I put a question in there about it does come from what is the organization wanting. It's just like how PMOs get set up in the first place. You need that sponsorship. You need those stakeholders in order to make PMOs successful and to thrive. And this is just another example of that. You are going to need to get that buy-in from the organization in order to be able to make this stuff work, you know, and that's going to be a key part of it. So 2023 is about, okay, let's pull back from the tech, understand it from a business point of view. And again, we started to make inroads from a House of PMO point of view, but we look towards Martin and projecting success to allow us to get access to that kind of insights that are coming out from that kind of technical, the know-how, the how are we going to do this and what kind of tools. You know, House of PMO is very much about let's just use the people that are, you know, already leading the way in this space. So great relationship with Martin and the team. 2024, we kicked off with the generative AI because that is the thing that kind of blew everybody away in late 2023. So we started and kicked off with this year by let's just understand actually the generative AI. So that kind of ChatGPT, you know, the stuff that's going on in Bing and Bard and all of that kind of thing. And again, you know, you're here today because you're already curious about this stuff. But there are thousands of PMO people behind you that are not even curious, that don't even understand what some of this stuff is, never use ChatGPT. Some people just, you know, are just not there at all in any way, shape or form. There's still a long way to go. And generative AI is what we kicked off with this year, but we absolutely know that the data is the thing that holds a lot of us back. I put up that silly picture of an Excel monster, but the truth is that a lot of PMOs are still working on the Excel spreadsheets. How do we get from that if their organizations have never even invested in a tool, whatever that might be? You know, so it feels for some of us that it's a big thing. So let's just look at some of the barriers that we're seeing from House of PMO and the wider PMO community. A lot of this kind of pushback from the organisation and the IT departments is because of the security and data privacy types concerns, which means for a lot of PMOs, it's off the table until the IT department is, you know, starting to come on board, or their mindsets are changing, or indeed the organizations are realizing and waking up to the fact that AI and data technologies are going to be some ways that are going to make their businesses more competitive. That needs to happen. Like I said, a lot of them it's about knowing where to start. It feels like a big subject, a big elephant. Where do we start? It's one chunk at a time, but which chunk? So again, at House of PMO, we're trying to help people and to think about which areas where those might be and what might feel like low-hanging fruit. We talked about the culture and about some of them are just not ready. And again, like anything, when you don't know something, training and education is needed. But where do you go for that? I mean, you've just heard today from two people where the apprenticeship might be the way forward because it allows you to carry on doing the job you're doing, do the training at the same time, and use that in your, you know, in your day-to-day work. I mean, what better? Apprenticeships have, again, if you're not sure about how they work, have a look, get in touch with Projecting Success and find out. For some, again, tools are not available. The argument is becoming a little bit easier to overcome just because the amount of work that's gone into the Microsoft and Office 365 products, which are at least allowing people to see that AI is already happening to them because of the tools that are already, you know, are being used within the organization. So, but like I said, some of the more advanced PPM type tooling that you need in order to be able to get your data sorted, again, it's just not there. And it is developing fast, too fast for some people. And a lot of it, it's not for me. Now, whether that's a generational thing, as well as having a natural curiosity for this kind of stuff, again, it is a problem. You know, it's something that needs to overcome. Plus sides are that there are already organisations and PMOs that have started the conversations because of the sheer nature of what is going on in the wider world and the economy and all that kind of thing as to how it's impacting their business. And again, thinking about being a bit more ahead of the curve, the ones that are starting with the experimentations, you've heard about it from Rolls Royce and also from Ramsey, that they're already starting to do that kind of thing because they can see where the returns are going to be. But again, starting with the experimentation, the training, the support, and having that strategy in place. And again, we've seen from the conference over the last 2 years, trying to bring in more stories where people are actually starting to do this in order to share what their insights have been in order to be able to, you know, let others see inside, basically. I think that's half the battle with any PMO and anything that PMOs are trying to do. We always try to look at what are other people doing and what can we take away from that. And there's no denying that, again, a lot of this kind of stuff is getting adopted by PMOs that are working within more mature PPM environments. So again, project program portfolio environments where they are doing more mature in the way that they are delivering today are more likely to be taking this step. For those that are feeling it's still immature, this is not even on the radar as much because of all the other kind of work that needs to be put in place in terms of delivering with best practice and all of that kind of good stuff. Bottom line is, from our point of view, is that we need to share more stories and we need more insights. So if you're sitting here listening today and do already do this kind of thing, get in touch with us. We want to hear your stories. We want you to be able to share them. And we're not looking for the finish. We've got the all singing, all dancing. It is about these kind of initial steps. There's baby steps. That's the things that really help people to get on board with things, rather than looking at, yes, it's great to hear the stories, like, wow, that's wonderful, great technology, but it's got to feel like it's achievable. And the final thing I will say from a House of PMO point of view, we have a nice picture of it. I love PMO. We've got to love our data, and we've got to love it more than we do today. And we've got to get our organisation behind us in that this data is their data. help the PMO to give you the better insights from the data that we've already got. So that's it from me.
Superb. Well done, Lindsay. Excellent stuff. So you've had quite a canter through. So we've listened to Amy, so Amy's told us about her journey in Ramsey Health. David's massive vision for $1 billion plus PMO, right? Really, really bold vision. He sees this being the future. And then just giving us a canter through the past 5 years about, where this has been, some of the barriers, etc. So what more could you ask for? So we've got a few questions that's going to start to come in. We've got some hands up as well, I think. So I'm going to ask you a quick couple of questions. So for the panel, so is this top-down driven or is it bottom-up driven? David, go for it.
So quite honestly, started out very much top-down, but then as soon as people started to see some of just the inspirational things that we can get inspired and started to do some things that were quite amazing, it starts to build a groundswell from the bottom up. So started top down, but absolutely now it's kind of both. People are kind of raising their expectations of what we can do, and that's how it kind of spreads and spreads and spreads.
Ace. So next rapid fire question is: buy these skills in, or take your existing people and just grow them and upskill them? So what's your view on that?
From my perspective, absolutely upskill. I think you can spend quite a lot of time with people that will tell you what you already know, and there's no better people to improve your kind of process, tools, or people than your own that experience your kind of projects on a day-to-day basis. That's my perspective anyway.
Yeah, cool. So what I'm seeing as well is that if you bring in data people, they can start to eat into the role of a PMO professional, right? And they'll chip away at bit by bit by bit. What's going to be left? What's going to be left? Because there's some of this stuff, some of the analytics, the insights, seeing around corners, predictive optimization, scenario generation. That's going to be more at the data end of the spectrum rather than the traditional PMO end of the spectrum. So we're going to start to eat away at the value of these PMO roles. So the PMO people need to move into data space. Otherwise, these sort of data people will start to eat their biscuits, basically.
No, they don't. What a
They
load
won't
of
have the vision.
tosh.
Go for it then,
I don't
Lindsay.
think they'll
Go
have the
for it.
vision. I
Go on,
think
Amy,
it's,
do you want to
it's,
go first?
it's a different set of visions between the PMO people and the data people.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think that you would find that the PMO people are better at the softer side, the herding cat side of it, than the data people.
Yep.
And they would look for different things because they'll be looking for making the processes work better and more smoothly and pulling the insights out, whereas the data people just want it to run, but they aren't looking for the insights. And it's the insights where, that's the human touch that really helps you drive making your projects work better and making your portfolios run more smoothly through the organization.
Yeah,
So
Cool.
Why I'm so against that statement is that that project management is about people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with Amy completely. There's a balance in terms of the PMO. You may want to get some data kind of skills in that are all about developing the analytics, but what we found is, like, when going to the hack events is a perfect example. You've got these mix around the table of the data analysts, the data scientists, the programmer, the project people, and obviously everybody's got their own bit that they're good at, and the tools are only as good as, and the insight, the data that comes out is only as good as somebody who's able to actually understand what it's actually telling them. And I think that's where it won't get rid of PMOs, because fundamentally it is a people business, and you're still going to need to be able to have all those things like communications, relationships, stakeholder management, all of those things. But no, it won't. What it should be doing is getting rid of some of the repetitiveness, but all PMOs around the world will say yes please, but it is about then widening what's left in terms of your time, because PMOs at the moment will just say, we've already got a load of 101 ideas on how we can make delivery better. The problem we've got is that our hands are tied behind our back because we're having to spend half of our time on an Excel spreadsheet and chasing people to update stuff. It's just, that's the reality.
So a difference of opinion, right? So David, what's your view on it as well? So if you jump in, so we've got the data people who's eating away at the role, we've got PMO people. What's your take on it?
So I still think there'll be a need for both, but I do think the balance will change. I think that there'll definitely always be a people aspect of PMO. That kind of project people kind of are a bit of a tribe, and I think that will still maintain. But I think how we use those people in the PMO will change, and I think as we get more kind of data literate and better at using data, I think we could look at how we can resource our PMOs differently. So yeah, I think there'll be a bit of both, but I do think that a lot of the kind of quite supporting PMOs will find that times are tough, because there will be a lot of threat from people trying to either outsource automation completely and buy people in, or kind of say you're not really adding the value, you're not strategic enough for us to kind of keep you going, because PMOs can be quite expensive to run as well.
There you go. So spot on. So we're running out of time. There's some comments in here about, PMO will still need controls and governance. The data just helps them more in their jobs. I think some of that's a different job, right? So I spoke to David about this actually. So David, you share your experience about this data cleaning, data wrangling versus analysts versus problem solvers, right? That was a really good insight for me. I loved it. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, so again, as we've got more and more mature, things are changing in what our teams spend their time doing. So we still have quite a lot of people that are extracting data, pulling different data sets together to try and generate the insights. And often that's actually too slow to really change the outcomes. We're not getting enough insight. And then even after we've got the insight, we then need to look at those insights to actually problem solve itself. So yeah, for me, that's where we need to be moving the dial. So the quicker we can do the kind of repetitive understanding, and even the quicker we can get the insight, even the next step, the more time we'll be able to affect project outcomes. And that's really what I think PMOs are all about.
Yeah. So spot on. So I'm not saying that PMOs will not exist, right? So we're going to still need something at the top of the organization that helps to shape all of this. I think it's been a fascinating conversation today. You've seen a bit of difference in opinion as well. I've tried to pull that out, right? Because this is not one size fits all. You've got small organizations, big organizations, some who just don't have the data volumes. So PMO is a bit of a side hustle to a main course. In David's organization, it's front and center, where some other organizations, it might just be bulletin on the side, right? It's different for each organization, but I would encourage you, lean into it. Just have a play around with it, see what it's all about. In terms of hackathons as well, we've got a virtual hack coming up in February as well. If you're interested in that, follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll tell you more about it. And we've got a physical hack that we just put in the final details on. We should be able to announce in the next week too. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us today, and a massive thanks to the panel as well, to Amy, to David, and to Lindsay. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll get the video live in the next day or two. So please jump in the conversation. If you like the book as well, please donate to Leukemia Care, and jump on LinkedIn as well. So thank you much.